Hello, this is Judy Bartkowiak from NLP and EFT Family. I specialise in working with children and teens and mums and dads. And I've written a number of books. I would say that the most recent is Empower Your Kids, a coaching guide for parents. And then in November, Understanding Children and Teens, a practical guide for parents, teachers, and coaches. I also have a series of workbooks called Engaging NLP for children, tweens, teens, new mums, parents, teachers, and so on. And then there's an NLP workbook, which is sort of not specifically for parents, and a self-esteem workbook, and be a happier parent with NLP. So, gosh, I've written quite a few books. In fact, my kids say, "What, another book?" But yes, I just can't stop. So in this episode, I want to talk to you about NLP modelling. It goes to the heart of NLP, really. It's the process by which we can acquire new skills. Now, the reason why this is so important is because children and teens naturally compare themselves with others. And they sort of look around the class, or she or he is better at maths, she or he is better at English, or I wish I was as confident as such and such a person. So they compare themselves, and let's face it, mums and dads do too. Oh, so and so is such a good mum, she does this, that, and the other. Oh, so and so is such a good dad, he does this, that, and the other. And we find so comparing is a sort of natural thing. What modelling does, it sort of turns this on its head and says, actually, instead of comparing ourselves with somebody else and thinking, oh, I wish I was like them, what it says is you can be like them. You actually can extract that thing that you notice, extract the skill, the belief, and so on, and actually have it for yourself. It also says that if we notice some skill, some quality, something in somebody else that we much admire or are inspired by, the reason that we do so is because actually there's a part of us that is like that. So we can model that thing in us and where we have it in ourselves. And children find this amazing. So when I have a session, say, with a child who is maybe very self-critical of their sort of social skills, says, oh, I find it difficult to make a friend, or often stand on my own in the playground. I don't really know sort of how to, start a conversation and things like that. Once we get talking about, for example, how they play a sport, and they realise that when they play a sport, they're looking out for who to pass to, they get eye contact, they communicate to them, I'm going to pass to you, and they then run ahead, so, look, pass to me, pass to me. It's a shame, really, this is a podcast because you can't see me getting all very excited about people passing into each other, but actually that's how conversation happens. And when they realise that they do have the skill to communicate, they do have those skills, it actually gives them a huge boost because they're so much in the I can't zone that when they realise, actually, I can, it's just that I do it in this part of my life rather than that part of my life, then they're away, and they can totally get it. So modelling then is the process by which we can acquire new skills. It's based on the understanding that if we find somebody who has the skill we want, then by copying its structure, that's the 1, 2, 3 bit of it, and the underlying belief, i.e. what they believe about being able to do that thing, we can have it for ourselves. It's a really powerful technique, and it enables us to incorporate into ourselves other people's skills and gifts. And the excellence that we model is something we think someone can do better than we can, but actually we have our own excellence. We have skills, as I said, that we use in another part of our life that we can transfer to where we need them. So I'm going to share a few quotes with you. So the first one is from my hero, my inspiration, Sue Knight, who trained me. And she says, when we step into someone else's shoes and reproduce what they do and the results they achieve, we are modeling. That's from Sue Knight. Jeremy Lazarus, who trained me in NLP for sports, because I'm very sporty, as many of you will know. He says, in modeling, we elicit the strategies, beliefs, values, and fundamental filters and the physiology that allows someone to produce certain behavior. Then we codify these in a series of steps designed to make the behavior easy to reproduce. So the purpose of modeling is to identify these steps and the belief. So imagine, for example, I'm a writer, and so I'm giving you a writing example here. So imagine you were someone who procrastinated when you have a writing assignment to complete. And that could be a blog post, an Instagram post. It could be an email you need to write to somebody. It could be some sort of form of communication, a report, a presentation. So something that you need to complete by a certain deadline. So in order to meet this deadline, you need to learn from someone who can focus and get that job done. So first, you need to find a few people who can do this really well. You maybe observe them, work out how they do it. What do they do first? What do they do next? And so on. Notice what you see, hear, and the actions that you witness. So then if you were to go away and copy this structure, you may improve your result, but you won't get the same result as them because your thinking is different. And how do we know that your thinking is different? It's because we procrastinate and they do not. We get distracted. I certainly find myself distracted with social media quite often, but they don't, and they meet their deadline. So we need to find out what's the difference that makes the difference. What's the thinking that they have that gets the result that that we need and that they get on a regular basis. So one of the ways that we can do that is to find out what is their thinking. So we might ask them, what's important to you about getting things done? And then go through the structure with that in mind. What's the belief? Try that out for size. Does that make a difference? And you can also think about your own life. Is there an area of your life where, in fact, you don't procrastinate and that you do get things done? And because we don't behave the same way in all situations. In fact, from a deadline point of view, the shorter the deadline I have, actually, the more likely I am to be focused. When I'm given like a sort of, a month to write something, I tend to wait until the day before, really, and write it, which is quite shocking, really, embarrassed to admit. But yes, a deadline really motivates me. If somebody says, oh, well, whenever, then, they probably won't get it. So look for where you have that skill, look where you have that belief, and take that belief. You can actually anchor that belief. You can really use it as an affirmation. You can use it as an NLP anchor. So it's really important to get that belief and map it across. And particularly with kids, they do have that believe that they do have the belief and that they can use it where they need to. One of the important things when you're trying to find trying to know who to model, who would be a good person to sort of copy, because that's what modeling is, to sort of copy, is to actually find somebody who may have struggled with that thing. I mean, they often say, don't they, that teachers who perhaps have struggled with a subject are actually better at teaching that subject than somebody who's perhaps always found sort of maths easy, because they don't really understand what your problem is. Whereas somebody who's actually gone through the problems and had to overcome them for themselves, when a child sort of asks that teacher, they'll say, oh yeah, I had that problem once, or they'll know what that feels like, and perhaps what the sort of error, or what the sort of, the false maybe move was in the process of that particular calculation or problem or whatever. So we need to get to the heart of what the belief is. Let me give you an example from my own life, actually. It's an example I put in the Be a Happier Parent with NLP book, which was written a few years ago when I used to play hockey competitively. I used to play for Ivor Heath, and I used to play left back. Don't even think that position exists anymore. But my job was really to protect the goal area. And so I'd have people running at me with the ball, really dead keen to score a goal. And it was my job to go up and tackle them. And I used to do that fairly successfully, but I thought I could improve. And so there was another player, Rachel, who actually is a teacher. And I asked her to show me how she tackled. And so I watched her so that she knew I was specifically watching her. So she was aware of the steps, 1, 2, 3, I do this, I do that, I put my shoulder like this, I lean in, etc., etc. So I had a go at doing that. And actually it did help, but it wasn't the difference that makes the difference. So I asked her, what's your belief in that moment that you go up to tackle? And she said, well, I'm determined, I'm going to get that ball. So I tried that. That sort of, helped a bit, but it still didn't really work. And then I had a bit of a sort of brainwave. I said, well, whose ball is it? And she said, it's my ball and I want it back. Now, what a powerful belief that was, because my belief was that it's their ball. And being the nice sort of person I am, it didn't really sit comfortably with me to take their ball off them. That felt like this is not quite the right thing to do. So my belief wasn't working, was it? Because I was just letting them score a goal and, so I needed Rachel's belief, and Rachel's belief was, it's my ball and I want it back. And that's what I mean about getting the belief. It's the belief that makes the difference. It's the difference that makes the difference. And it's, I can give you another example again from my own life. My dad had a stroke. I mean, he's passed a few years ago, but he had a stroke, and he was initially very depressed by the thought, because the week before he'd had his stroke, he was playing golf, once or twice a week. And so he was quite active for a man in his 90s. He was, and he was very depressed. And I asked him what he wanted. What do you looking at compelling outcomes? What do you want? And he said, I want to walk again. I mean, he was sort of at that point, sort of slightly dribbling out of the side of his mouth and slurring, and he couldn't move really any of his limbs, although he could, as I said, talk. And it seemed like, wow, that's a huge goal. It sounds like a bit ambitious. So I suggested to him that maybe he found somebody, could he think of anybody amongst his friends who had had a stroke and had been able to walk eventually. So actually, we were very lucky because my parents' neighbour, next door neighbour, had in fact had a stroke, and so I asked him if he could write to my dad and talk to him about what his sort of strategy was. I didn't really put it in NLP terms. I just sort of said, it'd be really nice to hear, how the sort of the story of your sort of journey to recovery. And he said that what he did was he started really small by just wanting to be able to move like one finger and just raise one finger off the bedclothes. And then, the second finger, and then the third finger, and then, the other hand. And so he was taking very, very, what we call in NLP, small chunk goals, just doing one thing at a time, and doing that, and really celebrating these little achievements. And so I read out the letter to my dad, and he found that really helpful to have that model of success from somebody, like himself, a bit younger than himself, who had really done the journey already. And so there's a couple of examples, one from the area of sports, one from the area of health. And one of the things I do with parents, because obviously this is really the focus here, is on parents. The modelling chapter that I'm talking about really is in most of my books. But the sort of health, if you want health and sports or relationship type examples, my book, Secrets of the NLP Masters, is probably quite a good one to get. But parents really want to know as well about modelling. How do they get their child to listen to them, to do what they're told? And of course, they do already have that model. I remember one mum, quite short, and she was telling me about her strapping teenage boys who basically weren't doing what they were told. So I asked her about explained to her about modelling. I said, believe that you have that model of being heard, being respected, being, things being done that you ask to be done. And she said, well, nobody questions me at work. And so there she was at work. She was like head of a huge sort of sales team, all across, I think, the south of the country. And 99% of them were guys, and she said they wouldn't dream of questioning, and they just would do what she asked them to do. So I said, well, what's your belief when you're asking them to do something? And she said, well, I believe that I will be heard, believe that, I know what I'm talking about, they respect me, and they'll do what they're told, and they do. And I said, okay, what's the belief you have when you ask your kids to do something? And she said, well, I just know they won't. So I said, what would it be like to actually, well, first of all, I asked her actually to sort of do like a bit of a psychodrama, and sort of to show me how she talked to her these salespeople. And so she sort of pushed herself up sort of tall, and she sort of projected, and her voice came from a lower place, like sort of in her tummy really. And it was slow, and it was quite authoritative. I definitely would have done what she said, and I don't do what most people say. So I thought, oh wow, she's definitely got, the voice. So I then got her to break state, which means do a bit of a jiggle and sort of change now to, okay, her mum voice. I said, okay, so, I'm one of your boys, and you want me to, I don't know, lay the table or put my clothes away or something. And she said what she said, like, put your clothes away, or can you just put your clothes away? She was looking down. She was a bit fidgety. Her voice came from like nearer her throat area. And it definitely didn't sound like, she really meant what she was saying or that she was really that bothered, to be honest. So I fed back to her the difference, and then I asked her to now speak to me in her work voice. And so she did, and it was like, whoa, okay, I better do that. And she realized that the moment she walked through the door, she was mum. And so she put on her mum voice. But then at work, she had her work voice. But actually, she had access to both voices, and she had access to that belief that I know what I'm talking about and I want you to do this thing. I'm not expecting any sort of, argument about it. So I think many of you listening to this will be thinking, yes, I think I have a work voice too. And yes, I'm sure we all do. So, modeling, it's really that belief that we have somewhere in our repertoire, we have the belief, the skill, the qualities that we need for whatever we want to do. And instead of seeing those around us as like better than us, cleverer than us, smarter than us, better parents, better this, better that, better tennis players. Instead of that, be curious. What is it that they're doing? How can you do that too? And then fundamentally, what's the belief that they have about doing that thing? Ask them, just before you serve, what's in your head? Or just before you do this, or as you do this, what's in your head? Get that belief and apply it. Okay, good luck. Let me know how it goes. Okay, bye then.